It's for me to defeat the King's move, I gotta make sure, if Michael Todd has it here, I gotta pull him over here to where that peg is, and then just make it a war of attrition. I just gotta hold him down. Nobody wins from the King's move, right? They use that King's move until the other guy gets tired, and then they bring it up, and they usually finish in a press. Well, if I can hold the King's move against that peg and not let them get their shoulder behind it, all right, now it's who's got more endurance. And I like my chances in an endurance match. Also, if I'm on the winning side, he's more vulnerable to mistakes than I am. But the only mistake I'm going to make is elbow foul. And to be honest, the refs don't like the King's move either. They will not call my elbow fouls if I'm beating Michael Todd. You know? The other famous ways of beating the King's move is the way Devin did it and John did it, is control his hand up the center and prevent it from doing it. Or, rest in peace, be Andre Pushkar and just be mean and just smash through it, you know. But Pushkar had a height and a meanness advantage that most people can't generate. But I myself don't have a problem with the King's move. It just shows that the sport's still innovating, you know. It's still changing, and the fact that a move like that can come in and go, what that means is since there's so many avenues for so many different people to come into it, that means the door's not shut, right? If we stopped inventing moves like that, then we're probably at the point where you got to be 6'2", 190 pounds with a giant hand to win a 200-pound arm wrestling class. I like the fact that different shapes and sizes and different work ethics and different physical abilities are all competitive in this sport, you know, which is why I think it attracts so many people and why so many people stay in it for so long. So there'll be something next coming down the line. When top rolling got popular, people used to complain about it too. In the 80s and stuff, when arm wrestling was famous, it was all inside grinding, back and forth, back and forth. You couldn't see it, but I mean, you know, top rolling was controversial for a while. So there'll be something else, you know. You should invent the next one, and then they can hate you for it for a year. What else? Anything else?
I got a few. I'll try them out.
Sure.
I'm curious about, now, you did get a bicep reattachment, didn't you?
Both arms.
Okay. And am I correct to assume that you got it drilled in higher?
Yep. No, I asked them to move it lower.
Lower is in lower towards your
Yeah, you would. I think if arm wrestling ever makes millionaires, we will have elective surgery for arm wrestling where they detach that tendon and move it lower. I asked them to move it lower.
Yeah.
And I know other people who asked it, like Cody Merritt tore his, and I think Marcio. We all asked the doctors to do it lower. I think the doctors go, yeah, I'll see what I can do. But I never got an x-ray to see where they put it. I know they attached my left one higher than my right because I got maybe 24 millimeters between the crook of my elbow and the bottom of my bicep on my right, and I got probably 27 or 30 on my left. So I know my left tendon was not attached as low as my right. I know for a fact because that gap's bigger.
Interesting. Now, did you notice, like once you healed up, that there was potentially an improvement to, like, your hook? Do you think that is partially responsible to the surgery?
I don't know. I know for sure when my left was fixed, it never came back to where it was. Now my left has always been weaker than my right, but my left is significantly behind my right now on things that attack that bicep.
Do you think that they attached that one closer to the elbow?
I think they moved my left tendon up beyond where it was. My right, I think they put it where it's supposed to be. When I saw the x-rays where the tendon attaches, the bone wasn't a cylinder, there was actually a lump where the tendon attached. And to be honest, I think the doctors are trained to put the tendon where it's supposed to be and not listen to some hillbilly who says, go ahead and, you know, attach my bicep down here to my wrist, that would be awesome because I could win a lot of t-shirts if it was down there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious, I like to think that most people arm wrestle kind of similarly, especially at the high level. Like I feel like even though it looks like, you know, you got like Jerry Caderet is arm wrestling one way, you know, Michael Todd's arm wrestling another way. But I find when you talk to the guys, they still kind of have the same philosophies on what's important. And so I'm wondering, because your style is a bit different than a lot of people, like what is your vital ground? Like when you talk technically, like what is the spot that, on a match that you really want to make sure that you own?
Like you said, when you talk to folks who arm wrestle, they always say, train the hand, train back pressure, train rising. I always focused on the elbow and side pressure for the simple reason that when I started, and I started asking people, and John used to do a Ask John Brezink like column on the internet, and I printed out everything he ever wrote and separated it into training and then the stuff I didn't care about. But what I realized was, whenever I talked to established arm wrestlers, they kept giving me the same advice. They go, this is how I got good. I go, okay, how long you been arm wrestling? 10, 15 years. Well, I can't start at 35, do what you've been doing for 15 years and ever catch up to you. So when I found the West Side Barbell and a way to actually measure strength, I just focused on, all matches eventually end up going sideways. So I focused on getting that elbow integrity because I needed that to win. And to be honest, I was only planning on being in the sport 3 or 4 years because I was told at 35, that's too old. So by the time I had a 40th birthday, I've been too old for 5 years. And I go, man, I'm still getting better at this, you know. But I trained my hand a lot. It's just that I don't think it'll ever catch up to folks who've been training it longer than I have. But my hand's better than it was when I started. And in my weight class, I have a geometry problem with people that are really tall with really big hands. Because even if my hand's strong, in my weight class, I can grab all of that on them. As soon as I start grabbing bigger hands and my hand comes back to here, I just don't flat have the leverage or the geometry to curl that in. But what I've noticed was, even though I lose my hand a lot, I used to lose it all the way there and have to pull completely through my wrist with my fingers wide open. I can now usually clamp onto somebody and drag them back even if my wrist is compromised. So my hand is coming up, and I would advise everybody to train their hand. We all train our hand with gobs and gobs of volume, which is one of the methods of building strength, but I haven't yet figured out a very efficient way of doing max effort and dynamic effort on our hands, just because the motion is so small and the muscles are so tiny. It could just take gobs and gobs of volume, you know. I mean, a max effort hand workout might be ounces different. You know, you might be able to do 40 pounds, not 41. I got no way of adjusting the weight between 40 pounds 2 ounces, 40 pounds 3 ounces, is what I believe. I don't know that, but that's something I believe.
What do you think about running away and talking? Like, do you think that, I don't feel like you develop a lot of your strength. Like, I feel like when I listen to your training, a lot of back, a lot of rowing, a lot of strength through the fingers, and cup seems a lot. Like, what percentage would you say you allocate to the art of actually letting go and like completely making the other person hold on to you?
I would love that. And I spent years trying to do that, because when I was in the WAL, RVJ, who has a hand about as the size of your left, RVJ and Alan Fisher have hands. They're under 200 pounds and their hands are as big and as long as a lot of 250, 300 pound folks. And I tried to slip on those guys all the time. What would happen is when I'd try to get out, if I let go, they were able to clamp onto my fingers and pull those fingers down. What I eventually had to do with both of them is, even though I am trying to get away from their hand, I would clamp and I would hit like I was offensively top rolling and then let go. everybody and their brother would coach me. All you got to do to slip is hit this way, hit this way. Yeah, I'd hit this way and get pinned like that, you know. So I focused a lot on cupping. And the way I train and coach people to train, focus on cupping. If your cup is strong, you now have the ability to develop supination or pronation. I don't know if you can develop pronation without cupping. I think cupping is the basis for the other hand movements. So whether you're top rolling or hooking, I think you need that cupping power. And when I started training cupping, and I advocate training your hands, not isolated. Like I will never grab a bar and just wrist curl it, where I'm supporting the forearm and just wrist curling this. And those are very popular movements. And so are these type of movements where the forearm is rested. I believe when you're arm wrestling, you're engaging that hand, whether you're cupping or pronating, but you're doing it and you're powering that with your shoulders and your back. So I think all your hand training should be done using the big muscle groups. To me, it's more convenient to do it on the table with a pulley machine, but I would much rather train my cup this way as opposed to locking in and just trying to do this wrist curl. Because in all honesty, I don't sit here and wrist curl off go. I clamp my hand and try to pull it backwards. Now, when you train this way, the weights are necessarily higher, so you can go from 50 to 55 pounds while training your hand predominantly. Whereas this type of stuff, a small increase in weight can be the difference between doing 15 reps and doing 0 reps, just because the muscles are so much smaller. So it's what I believe. I've been doing it for a year or two now. I haven't, it's not long enough to say it's absolutely true, but I try to do all my hand training by powering it through my back and shoulders. Yes, sir.
Have you ever torn your bicep at the shoulder?
Nope, I've only had the 2 injuries, and both of them were tendon pops. The right one when I was arm wrestling Dave Chafee, and the elbow pads were really soft, right? And it was the first time I ever pulled Dave Chafee, and he wasn't super famous Dave Chafee, he was almost famous Dave Chafee. And this was at a tournament where it was one weight class, and you were loaded up into the brackets from the lightest to the heaviest. So, and that was to eliminate people cutting weight. The problem is, if you're in the 200-pound range, you're in the middle of everybody else. So, I still cut weight, and the weigh-ins were like an hour before the tournament started. So I still cut weight, thinking that I wanted to be near the top of the bottom bracket. Ron Bath was there. We're the same weight. I cut like 6 pounds, weighed in. Ron Bath weighed like 4 pounds more than me. Ron Bath was the bottom person on the heavy bracket. So as he went through, every time he won, he arm wrestled somebody heavier. I was the top person on the lower bracket. Every round I won. My last match before Dave Chafee was Cobra Rhodes. Ron Bath kept arm wrestling bigger people, But I threw inside on Dave, and I caught him here, and Dave has this weird pulling. When he pulls me, he pulls weird. It's this flat-handed, like, backward stuff. And I had him, and he pulled out, and my arm went kind of straight, but then he hit again, and I couldn't get any purchase on that elbow pad. My arm went straight, and Dave kept going, and then that popped. The more embarrassing one was I was practicing, for crying out loud, with Marcio Barbosa. And we were right-handed, and we were in a deep hook, and he hit, and my left arm went straight, and Marcio detached my left bicep, arm wrestling right-handed, in practice, for crying out loud. Anything else? All right, I got a few more. I can stop talking anytime. But going back to what we said first, when we talk about strength training, right, you got to understand, we throw these terms around a lot, but we should come to an understanding. From your high school physics, you understand there's pressure, force, work, and power. And we interchangeably use strength and power to represent all 4, all right? Pressure is just a load divided by area. They call it side pressure, but technically speaking, it's side force, okay? Force times distance is work, all right? So if If me and him are in a bench pressing contest and his arms are 4 inches longer than mine, we both bench 315. He did more work. He didn't do more force than I did. 315 is the same. He had to push it 4 inches longer, all right? He did more work. Work, as you increase your work capacity, that can lead to better endurance, better recovery, that kind of stuff, right? Not necessarily more force, but it'll give you the ability to do the same force like more times, all right? Power is work divided by time. Okay, so if we each bench 315, right, and we did it in 1 second, he also did more power than I did, because he moved it farther in a less amount of time. But if he moves the weight 10% farther than I do, and our times are, and I do my bench 10% quicker than he did, our power could be the same, even though the force was the same and the work was different, okay? Power is that ability to recruit those muscles immediately. Flash pins are a sign of power, all right? Slow grinding steady state wins are a sign of more force, all right? Tying somebody up for a longer period of time would be endurance, but that would primarily be due to who can do the most work, all right? When you train for arm wrestling, unlike weightlifting, where the bar's got to go in the same lane every time, you got to have all three, right? A lot of times we will refer to somebody being fast when we might mean they're just more powerful, all right? Speed could be a difference in reaction time. We both hear go at the same time and he launches first, but if he launches first and I've got more power and I stop him and overpower him, I left second, I got the flash pin, so that's power, right? So what the West Side Barbell system brought to powerlifting, and what I tried to just shamelessly copy into arm wrestling, is you want to develop all three, right? To be well-rounded. Now this is separate than tactics, top rolling or hooking, right? So you want to develop power, which is the rapid acceleration of force. You do that pulling against bands. You do that smashing into a chain. Anything that spikes the force way up for a short period of time will develop power. You'll get your work on your volume days, right? The force over lots and lots of reps. And then your max effort work, it develops force. So that's your 1 rep maxes. Isometrics are, by definition, the way of developing force. Because you're pulling against the chain, you're pulling against it as hard as you can, nothing's moving. So your force is way up. If I got a chain and a 110-pound wrist wrench on, I'm putting more than 110 pounds into it. So my force is 110 pounds plus. It's not moving, so there's no work. So since it's not moving, since there's no work, there could be no power because power is work divided by time. So by doing max effort, volume days, and plyometric days, you'll develop all three. Bodybuilding primarily focuses on a lot of work, right? Big sets of big reps, you know, not so much maximum effort weights. That's a good way of getting hypertrophy, getting muscle mass, that kind of stuff, which is an advantage, but you don't necessarily want that, especially if you're cutting weight. Let's see. We pretty much talked about everything else.
How often do you go to failure?
I max effort on arm wrestling once a week, and I max effort on JM presses once a week. So those are to failure. I currently, on my volume days, I keep adding weight until I can no longer do that. So that's to failure over 36 some reps. But I'll do a 1 rep max to failure twice a week. Once on a JM press and once on arm wrestling. And I'll do a volume failure maybe 3 times a week. JM presses for sure, deadlifting for sure. On the arm wrestling motion to failure, I was doing sets of 20, and then I'm just trying to now do sets of 500 total reps. So maybe 3 times a 2 max effort days and maybe 3 volumes. So maybe 5 times a week.
So your last rep you do, you can't.
Right. When it comes to like deadlifting, a lot of times I'll drop deadlifting is 6 sets to 6, and sometimes the 4th set I can't do all 6. Then I'll rest, and I can do sets 5 and 6, but I didn't do all 36. So a lot of times the failure is in that middle set. And max effort work will do something which is so addictive. And anybody who trains the max effort, who's ever done the Westside Barbell System will realize